President Trump is headed to Pennsylvania today to discuss how his administration is making America affordable once again. Watch.
We inherited a mess, affordability, but you can call it affordability or anything you want, but the Democrats caused the affordability problem, and we're the ones that are fixing it. They have a tendency to just say this election's based on affordability, and nobody questions them, John. You know, nobody says, "Oh, well, what do you mean by that?" But they just say the word. They never say anything else because they caused the problem. But we're fixing the problem.
And we've already seen policies that have been working. Today's national average for gasoline down below $3 a gallon, down 20 cents since President Trump took office, and below $3 for the first time in 4 years. But a new Harvard-Harris poll shows 57% of voters still say that the president is, quote, losing the battle against inflation. And they remain split on whether the economy was better or worse under the Trump administration compared to the Biden era. Still, a majority say that they trust Republicans to manage the economy better than Democrats. I think this is just stunning that anybody's questioning whether or not the economy is better today than under Biden. I mean, Paul, let's face it, under Biden, we had 40-year highs in inflation. And we also have this time around under President Trump, $18 trillion of new investment coming into the country.
Yeah, through the tariffs as well. So you have to look at the fact that, I mean, to me, the serious metric here is the gas price. Everything runs on energy. It's something the president himself has said so many times. I appreciate the fact that he does talk about an all-of-the-above approach, but at the end of the day, he knows this is a fossil fuel economy. It's going to remain so until nukes or something else we don't see comes along, fusion or something, which has been the holy grail. And that's what's driving any increases in the economy that you're seeing on the ground as inflation comes down. Has to be tied in many, many ways. We talked about fraud. We talked about some other things. Energy is the key. And it's telling that when it comes down to the things that really impact your life, safety, the money in your pocket, your future economy, those things are trusted more by the American public with Republicans. They're the adults in the room. I'm sorry, it's just the case.
Yeah, I mean, John, what other metrics are you looking at to measure affordability and inflation right now? I mean, look, housing is an issue, but there are specifics in that because of the amount of supply. And, of course, health care is an issue, but President Trump is working on that with getting prescription prices down. I guess it's largely food, right?
It's food, and it's also the cost of home ownership as it relates to your utility bill. We see that utility rates are still rising at a rapid pace. I think the last time I looked, the CPI in September said that the price of piped natural gas, if you heat your home with natural gas, that's up by nearly 14% from a year ago. Electricity prices are up by 5%. There's also the cost of maintaining the home as far as getting a plumber or an electrician. That is up considerably, too. So, what about property taxes? They've been rising at a pretty rapid clip. Listen, there's not a lot that President Trump can do about this problem at anytime soon, but we would hope that over time that we get more tradespeople, that the education system gets better. I think the average American senses correctly that there has been a damaging deterioration of public education since COVID. You got to turn that around if you want to have young people be smart enough to learn a trade such as electrician or plumber.
Yeah, and you know what? We're going to need more electricians, plumbers, construction workers, drivers, a lot going into the new year. But I think we are also not putting enough emphasis on the big, beautiful bill. I mean, look, all that fighting over this massive piece of legislation, well, guess what? It's going to take effect next year, like in a couple of weeks. So once we start seeing the impact on business, like from expensing and all the tax code changes when it comes to individuals, don't you think people are going to actually feel that?
Yeah, they will. But I think it's also important that we begin to see something more substantial in terms of jobs growth. That has really withered away, and that has to be on the minds of Americans. And worse yet, what we're getting in terms of jobs growth appears to be narrowly focused. It seems to be mostly consisting of new jobs in healthcare, social assistance, and leisure and hospitality. These other areas aren't showing much of anything in terms of jobs creation. Bad news for recent college grads.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that you mentioned, and I asked Jamie Dimon about it in terms of AI, because when you're taking a look at jobs, aren't you taking a look at a more nuanced situation here, Paul? It's not just about the macro story and companies cutting jobs. It's also about AI replacing jobs and the efficiency of AI. We need plans for that. We need a plan to ensure that Americans have their best foot forward when it comes to AI and are ready for these AI efficiency potential cuts.
Maria, a relative of mine was at a symposium with one of the leaders in AI, and when asked what he should be doing as somebody who is entering college, this person told him drop out, because the all-encompassing effects of AI are going to be that large. And we have a tendency to say, you know what, the blue-collar jobs are not going to be affected. I know a landscaper who has an AI-powered lawnmower. He got rid of a bunch of his people because the lawnmower knows how to mow the lawn. There are going to be those kinds of effects all the way down the chain. We have no idea what this transformation is going to be like. All I'm going to say is this. A lot of what President Trump has been doing, and that's why I go back to energy, this stuff takes time. He inherited 9% inflation. It's not going to change overnight. Let's see 2026. It's the midterms. That's where the rubber is going to hit the road.
Exactly. And I asked Jamie Dimon about it this week, what he's doing in terms of jobs and AI and what his expectations are. He wasn't very worried about 2026. He says it's an impact that's going to come longer term. Watch this. Are we going to see any return on investment on all this money anytime soon? We've got about 5,000 data centers that have built for AI. Where's the return on investment?
I heard we did a research report about how much. It's $5 trillion, and that includes everything: the data centers, the servers, the chips, the fiber. It doesn't necessarily include the power plant or the transmission lines, but there will be big winners. You know, you remember out of the internet, you got Google and Facebook and Amazon and tons of others and whole new technologies. But it took a while for some other things to come in, like the iPhone or something. So here, it will eventually pay off.
And he said eventually it will pay off, and over the near term, we're going to need so many new job opportunities like construction workers, electricians, et cetera, in 2026. So he wasn't worried about the near term. I should point out, when talking about affordability, John, the president announced this bailout for America's farmers and all those farmers that were impacted by tariffs. Watch this.
The United States will be taking a small portion of the hundreds of billions of dollars we receive in tariffs. We were taking a relatively small portion of that, and we're going to be giving and providing it to the farmers in economic assistance. And we love our farmers. And as you know, the farmers like me, they're the backbone of our country. So we're going to use that money to provide $12 billion in economic assistance to American farmers. $12 billion is a lot of money.
Thoughts, gentlemen? Paul?
Well, first, I would say that I hope as he gives money to the farmers, he's not giving any of it to the Chinese farmers, Chinese government land that's been bought all over America. And secondly,
good point.
I would argue that we have not seen the denouement, the final conclusion on the tariffs, because in 2026, there is going to be an enormous SCOTUS decision that's going to impact the tariffs. And if they are, in fact, found to be under Congress and not the president, and many observers feel that way, this is going to be an enormous tangle that has to be untangled, and it's unprecedented.
Absolutely. In fact, when I asked the president about it, he said, well, if they rule against us, we're going to have to pay some money back. But that's not to say they don't have backup plans, because they certainly do.